My eldest son, whom I raised single-handedly, is getting married. His fiancée is strikingly beautiful, like a model. Yet it became clear that beauty was her only asset when she callously told me, "You're a dropout and a stranger, so don't come." To add insult to injury, I was deceived about the wedding venue. Over time, she maintained a contemptuous attitude towards me due to my lack of formal education. She even portrayed me as the unreasonable mother who supposedly canceled their wedding at the last minute. It was unforgivable. While they were away on their honeymoon, I, Linda, soon to be 57, reminisced about my life. My husband had passed away from cancer the year our second son was born, leaving me overwhelmed with 2 young children. As the new year rolled in, I found solace only in working tirelessly day and night. My eldest son, Paul, stepped up admirably, caring for his younger brother Thomas. Even as a little boy, I did what I could for my boys, and Paul has grown into a remarkable adult. It was a challenge when he decided to enter the workforce straight out of high school. I fondly recall the effort it took to persuade him to pursue college, a distant memory now. After graduating, he secured a position at a prominent trading company and began forging a promising path. Apparently, Paul has a girlfriend whom he plans to marry someday. He expressed his desire to introduce her to me, which was somewhat unexpected given his intense focus on his career. I had imagined he would marry much later, but I genuinely felt joy knowing he wanted to start his own family soon. Having not been the most attentive mother, I worried whether he would value starting a family. However, all my concerns dissolved as Paul's wedding approached. I eagerly anticipated meeting his partner and eagerly awaited the day of their introduction. The woman who entered was slender and breathtakingly beautiful, momentarily leaving me speechless. I wondered where Paul had encountered such a beauty. When Paul introduced her, I was surprised to learn she was an actual model. He had met Sarah through his advertising work at the trading company. Sarah, 24 years old, appeared vivacious and made a favorable initial impression, though something nagged at me. She glanced around our home without hesitation, almost assessing her future in-law's residence, which unsettled me. Moreover, her refusal to even touch the coffee I offered didn't sit right with me. When Paul stepped away to take a work call, Sarah and I found ourselves alone for the first time. It was an awkward moment, and we struggled to initiate a conversation. "You'll soon be my daughter when you marry Paul, so feel free to talk about anything." I attempted to break the ice. To my surprise, Sarah looked taken aback by my words and then uttered something astonishing. "No need. I wouldn't seek advice from someone who didn't finish school," she said with a polite smile, leaving me momentarily stunned. Her smile seemed sincere as she continued, "Yes, I did leave school early, but I had my reasons. My father passed away when I was in middle school, leaving me, my younger brother, and sister with our mother. She worked tirelessly to support us, but there were limitations. I made the decision to start working right after middle school, against my mother's desperate pleas for me to at least finish high school. I have no regrets about that decision even now." I was taken aback and completely unprepared for her condescending attitude towards my education. It caught me completely off guard. "Well, I have a higher education than you, so what would I gain from consulting someone beneath me?" she remarked with a laugh, leaving me speechless. Now, the prospect of her becoming my daughter-in-law was starting to give me a headache. "Looks like you two were getting along well while I was on the call," Paul said upon his return, cheerfully breaking the tension. Sarah responded with a graceful smile, seemingly brushing off the earlier incident. "She's a delightful mother. I'm sure we'll get along just fine," she remarked. Hearing that, I almost choked on my coffee. Sensing my distress, Sarah asked with a laugh, though her eyes betrayed a lack of warmth. I sighed quietly, apprehensive about what the future held. My initial encounter with Paul's future wife, Sarah, was less than ideal. She repeatedly belittled me for dropping out of school, albeit seemingly without malice. Despite her unintended hurtful remarks, I struggled with the idea of her becoming a part of our family. Nevertheless, because she was Paul's choice, I attempted to accept her. After that first meeting, Sarah never visited our home again. I inquired with Paul about their wedding plans, and he assured me everything was proceeding as planned. He had already met her well-educated parents, both graduates of prestigious universities. They had first met during a seminar at the university where Paul himself had graduated from, and Sarah's parents had grown quite fond of him. When I asked Paul about arranging a meeting between both families, he awkwardly replied, "I'm good for now," leaving me puzzled about what he meant. It appeared that the wedding plans were well underway. Paul, occupied with his job, had delegated all arrangements to Sarah. Since Paul seemed satisfied, I find it difficult to intervene. At least he's handled meeting her parents with proper etiquette. Despite my reservations, I've chosen to observe quietly. More than 6 months after our initial meeting, Sarah reached out to discuss the wedding. Invitations had already been dispatched to various guests. They'd chosen a luxurious hotel venue, indicating a substantial gathering of over 100 guests. It's shaping up to be quite a lavish affair, a rarity these days. It sounds like you're planning quite a grand wedding, I remarked. Yes, my father owns a company, so through various connections, the guest list expanded, she explained. As I listened to Sarah, I started to have concerns about the planning on the groom's side. Paul has left everything to Sarah. I'm worried if they've considered the seating arrangements. I know Paul has left everything to you, but could you let me know who's coming from his side? I wouldn't want to be rude by not recognizing someone, I asked. Sarah responded with a hint of irritation. Sure, she said curtly. Everything's perfectly arranged, so there's no need to worry, she added, her tone coming across as somewhat condescending. I felt a surge of irritation, but I held back from raising my voice to a younger woman. The wedding was just a month away, and I emphasized the importance of having the date and time confirmed repeatedly. I asked Sarah for an invitation, but she explained they were only printing the necessary minimum. She didn't send one. We're trying to keep costs down, she said, leaving me unable to press further. I made sure to mark the date on my calendar so as not to forget. Paul had moved to a new house the previous week. The move seemed sudden, and I was left bewildered as I watched the movers take away his belongings. Paul, apparently unaware of the exact moving day, returned that evening to find his things gone. He chuckled it off, attributing it to Sarah's planning, and headed to his new home. I realized I didn't even know his new address. I assumed he would reach out to me, but so far, I haven't heard anything. On the wedding day, I dressed up and made my way to the hotel. Despite the celebratory atmosphere, I had some unresolved feelings toward Sarah. I felt like I wasn't being respected as the mother of the groom. As I entered the hotel lobby, guests, presumably from the bride's side, were gathering. I didn't recognize anyone, confirming they were likely Sarah's relatives. Making my way to the groom's waiting room, I encountered a scene that left me utterly stunned. Sitting together were a bride and groom, surrounded by elegantly dressed men and women. Assuming these were Sarah's parents, I was taken aback. However, I soon realized they weren't Paul and Sarah at all, but complete strangers. They looked at me with confusion, understandably seeing me as an unexpected intruder in their private moment. Sorry, I must have walked into the wrong room, I muttered, feeling my face flush with embarrassment as I hurriedly exited. It was indeed another wedding. A sinking feeling prompted me to approach the hotel's bridal staff. They confirmed there was no reservation for Paul's wedding. Sarah had deceived me about the date and time, though I was certain today was supposed to be the wedding day. Regrettably, I have failed to confirm the location with Paul in time. Somewhere at this moment, Paul and Sarah were surely having their wedding. It dawned on me that Sarah had orchestrated this to ensure I wouldn't attend. I quickly dialed Sarah's number. She picked up immediately. What is the meaning of this? I demanded, my voice tinged with frustration. Sarah let out a heavy sigh. How inappropriate to disrupt such an important day, she scolded. She sounded alone. There was no one else around her. Sarah, you're the one being unreasonable. Why would you lie? I began, but she cut me off sharply. People who didn't finish school are strangers here, so leave, she declared coldly. Her words hit me like a blow. I seethed, thinking about the lengths she had gone to humiliate me. Paul, I understand, I said firmly. But it was too late to salvage the situation and make it to the wedding. My main worry was how Paul must have felt in my absence. In the end, I couldn't attend and returned home. The next day, I was awakened by a call from Thomas, who works overseas, and had regretfully informed us he couldn't make it back for Paul's wedding. Paul reached out to me, revealing that he hadn't shown up at the wedding either. He explained, it seems Sarah had contacted Thomas, and somehow the story got twisted into me opposing Sarah and canceling the wedding at the last minute. Paul was seeking advice from Thomas on how to handle the situation. Sarah's manipulation was nothing short of remarkable. I explained the truth to Thomas, recounting how Sarah had deceived me with false information, preventing my attendance at the wedding. Initially, Thomas seemed skeptical, perhaps thinking I was making excuses. However, as I described Sarah's dismissive behavior during her initial visit, he began to believe me. Does Paul know about this? he inquired. He probably thinks I canceled at the last minute, I replied, feeling tears of frustration welling up. You won't let this slide, will you? Thomas sought to reassure me. No, I affirmed. This was no time for tears. I was determined to set things right with Paul, and my frustration soon gave way to resolve. Unable to reach Paul, who was likely on his honeymoon, I decided to confront Sarah's parents directly. I visited their home, where they greeted me with evident suspicion. As we sat down to talk, it became apparent they believed I had opposed the marriage and abruptly canceled at the last minute. I started by addressing this misunderstanding head-on. I wasn't certain they would trust my explanation, but I felt compelled to lay out the truth. Initially, they remained skeptical. However, as a last resort, I revealed my trump card, a recorded conversation with Sarah. It felt drastic, but I had no other choice. With a deep breath, I retrieved my phone and played the recorded conversation. The harsh words Sarah spoke echoed through the phone. I understand why you'd want to support Sarah. I'm a mother too, but please understand how painful it is to be excluded from my own son's wedding, I pleaded. Sarah's parents bowed their heads in silence, offering no apology. It dawned on me then. They had molded Sarah into the person she was, including her disdain for my lack of formal education. In that tense silence, I slid my business card across the table. Sarah's father's eyes widened as he examined it, then looked back at me. I'll do whatever it takes, I vowed. Paul returned a week later from his honeymoon, during which I hadn't heard from him. I feared Sarah might have influenced him, but it turned out to be an unnecessary worry. As I heard the front door open, I stepped out of the living room to find Paul walking in. Upon seeing me, he hurried over to apologize. Mom, I'm sorry I didn't realize what was happening. Soon after the newlyweds returned from their honeymoon to their new home, Sarah's parents paid them a visit. Without time to settle in, Sarah found herself confronted by her father, Joseph. What's going on? Paul, caught off guard, was stunned as Joseph burst in, shouting at Sarah. Sarah hesitated briefly under her father's anger, but her resolve quickly kicked in, leading to a heated exchange between father and daughter. Your actions are tarnishing our reputation, he thundered, tossing my business card at Sarah. She picked it up, her face draining of color as she read my title. Unknown to Sarah, I held the position of president at one of her father's crucial business clients. Despite leaving school early, I worked diligently and earned respect, rising to this prestigious role. Additionally, her father's company acted as a subcontractor for mine. Just 3 days earlier, I had terminated all contracts with his small parts distribution business, which relied heavily on our company for over 80% of its orders. It was understandable that he was upset. You need to apologize to Linda immediately, he insisted. Sarah hesitated, clearly confused. I don't see why I should apologize to someone like her, she retorted stubbornly. It was then that Paul began to grasp the truth. Reflecting on Sarah's behavior, he started to notice several inconsistencies. He apologized to me for believing Sarah's fabricated story about my absence on the wedding day. Mom, I forgot. I should never have doubted you. I'm truly sorry. It's all right, as long as you understand. But I won't reverse my decision regarding the company. I can't continue business with someone who discriminates based on education, I asserted. Paul nodded in agreement. Then he declared, the marriage is over. The scandalous news of a divorce right after their honeymoon spread rapidly. Paul apologized to the guests and reimbursed the gifts from his side at his own expense. Allegedly, there was no response from Sarah's guests. When her guests requested reimbursements, she reportedly caused a scene. The divorce was a difficult process, eventually involving lawyers. The recorded evidence I provided played a crucial role in the proceedings. Paul joked that divorcing was harder than getting married and mentioned that Sarah's father's company was now facing bankruptcy, despite attempting to return to modeling. Sarah found her reputation too tarnished for any agency to hire her. Recently, she's been spotted intoxicated, still harboring resentment towards me. The dropout old lady. There's been no sign of remorse from her. Perhaps further setbacks might prompt some introspection. Back at home, Hall suggested renovating our old house. It seems he's in no rush to remarry. I'll focus on my career, just like you, Mom, he said, bringing me joy. I felt reassured that I have fulfilled both parental roles effectively. Just be more cautious in your choice of partner next time, was my only advice. Paul nodded.